My name is Matt Young. For those of you who don't know me, I teach in the English department here at the campus, composition, creative writing, and literature. I've been here for about 6 years, and I received tenure last year. So I'm here today to talk a little bit about labor-based grading. I'm going to go over kind of an overview, how I came to it, some things I use to get started, some takeaways I have in my ongoing process, and also some resources and contact info as we go through. We'll start with the overview. So what is labor-based grading? Labor-based grading is a version of ungrading. It falls under the umbrella of ungrading that uses a standard of how much work a student does to decide a grade. The standards of assessment, which is basically like how labor is determined, like the definition of labor, all those things are negotiable for students in the process of the crafting of a labor-based grading course. It doesn't focus on the quality of a student's writing. Instead, a labor-based grading agreement is a set of social agreements about how much work students will have to do in order to get any particular grade in the course. So basically, it's a system that supposes grades are not an adequate measure of learning. Some markers of a labor-based grading system are there are no grades on assignments. There's a mechanism for negotiation, student feedback. Student conferences are a big part of the ecology set up by a labor-based grading system. It's actively anti-racist and heavily reflective, both in terms of student action and instructor action. So some of the tenets of labor-based grading systems and what they focus on basically are equity, student agency, and fostering trust, community, and compassion. Those first two things really kind of being couched in that third thing, I think, as well. So it's basically a system of assessment that instead of looking at students as more of a product, more of a number, they're like a whole human being that is sitting in your classroom that's making up this ecology of your classroom. Okay, so why I'm trying it. I got interested in kind of ungrading because I've been thinking about and talking and having conversations with colleagues here at the college and also at institutions beyond this college about ungrading for a while, and I've been kind of recognizing that my rubric standards represent a very narrow view of what constitutes good writing, and good writing is such a subjective term, right? So these ideas of subjectivity and assessment, like how do we take that subjectivity out, or how do we refocus that idea of subjectivity? How do I decenter my view of what good is? Because my view of good is also very narrow, right? I have my own stylistic and aesthetic wants and needs and desires, and those things are very different from students and potentially the writing they're going to do beyond my course and beyond the college. I also want my students to stop grade chasing. How do I get an A on this assignment? How do I, how do I get that 20 out of 20? How do I get that thing? Well, you get the grade, you earn your grades in this course. I don't give them to you, which I think is the thing that we all usually say, but is maybe somewhat still inadequate. And so how do I do that? Well, one of those ways is just kind of getting rid of grades. and so this is a system that does that for me. I also like experimenting with new assessment standards and strategies. So kind of thinking how can I, keeping things engaging for me as an instructor so I'm not just doing the same thing over and over and over again, which I think can become a feedback loop, right? Not always a positive one. And an echo chamber a lot of the time too. I've been wanting to try some form of ungrading for a while. Like I said, I've been thinking about it, talking about it, reading about it. And so when the opportunity arose, I kind of jumped at it. So how did that opportunity arise? So I got lucky and got on board with a state board project called the Anti-Racist Curriculum Initiative. Ungrading and labor-based grading, they both have awesome equity implications. So if you're interested in that, this is one of those ways to go. So I had support and resources. I wasn't doing it all on my own. And I think if I was doing it all on my own, it would seem really overwhelming to take the content of my course, knowing what I know now, and try to do all this by myself without any kind of monetary support or community support from other instructors. And so that's been really helpful and really great. But even with all that stuff, it's taken me about 8 months in 3 different classes, which I think is probably pretty normal for all of us, to kind of refine content over the course of basically, 3 different terms, 3 different classes, or 3 of the same classes, working out the kinks in the new content, the new curriculum that you've included. Usually I find that's how long it takes me to get something that I'm more comfortable with, and feel like I have a working knowledge of. So yeah, it's taken me about 8 months, and I'm currently in the midst of my third implementation of this as I make this video. I'm in the first week of classes still, and students are very engaged by it, and I think I've got a lot of the kinks worked out. I don't think I've got all of them worked out in my syllabus and accompanying grading agreement, but it seems to be moving forward, which is nice. So the first thing I did to get there 8 months ago was kind of, beyond doing a lot of reading and research about the thing, is I started to evaluate my course. And I'm really focused on right now, because the State Board project is focused on English 101, I'm also focusing on English 101, but I have implemented a grading agreement also in creative writing classrooms, both an intermediate creative writing classroom and an introduction to creative writing classroom. So I've also got beyond English 101 and implementing that in 2 different 101 courses. I've also implemented it in 2 different creative writing courses and tried it out there. So it's provided me with a varied set of data that's been really interesting. But the first thing I'm doing is going over my assignments, my rubrics, professional essays, things I'm having students interact with as objectively as possible, and trying to understand the way that my current rubric-based assessment practice and course artifacts are impacting my students, their learning, the class ecology, environment, ecosystem, whatever you want to call it. And trying to figure out why I'm doing the things I'm doing. Where have I established those assessment standards? Why do I use that rubric? Why is that a marker of knowledge to me? How does that correlate to the course learning outcomes and objectives? So trying to figure out all that stuff. And that is a Herculean task in and of itself. And then you're essentially doing forensic anatomy on your course, right? You're exploding the thing and looking at each individual part of it. It takes a lot of time. And so after I did that, I spent some time thinking about the teaching philosophy I want to embody during instruction and assessment. So I had all this essential, qualitative data from picking my course apart, and then trying to think about who I want to embody, what I want to be as a teacher, as an instructor, what I want to be when I'm instructing, what I want to be as I'm assessing, what do those things look like? Where are their overlaps? Where am I completely missing the mark in the content that I'm providing students, and where am I doing that thing right? Where do I think I'm doing it right? And then I'm in formulating that philosophy, I'm using it as kind of a basis for my grading agreement, so I can explain to students why you're now being assessed this way when you've never been assessed this way before for most of them, right? They're going to need some background for it. There are some specific things that a grading agreement needs. It's not just we're not going to grade. There's a really specific mechanism for how grades are worked out.